Stop what you're doing right now, because what happened 6 days ago, over the weekend of February 28th, has set off an economic chain reaction that is going to hit every single American household. Your gas bill, your grocery bill, your retirement account, your mortgage, your job. I'm talking about a war. The United States and Israel launched a massive military offensive against Iran. They called it Operation Epic Fury. And the shockwaves, they are not just military. They are financial. They are economic. And they are heading straight for your wallet. By the time you finish watching this video, you will understand exactly what is happening, why it matters to you personally, what the three possible outcomes are, and whether or not America is walking into a full-blown recession. Let's go. Here are the facts. On February 28, 2026, the United States military, in coordination with Israel, launched coordinated strikes against Iran in what the Pentagon officially named Operation Epic Fury. This was not a small airstrike. This was a full-scale assault. By March 1st, President Trump announced that 9 Iranian naval ships had been destroyed and sunk. By March 4th, today, updated reports from military analysts confirm at least 17 Iranian warships are destroyed, including Iran's newly commissioned drone and helicopter carrier, the Shahid Bagheri. A U.S. Navy submarine fired torpedoes and sank an Iranian warship in the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's key naval base on the Strait of Hormuz was set ablaze. And in the opening phase of the strikes, Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was killed. That is not a small thing. Khamenei had ruled Iran for over 30 years. His death has sent the entire Middle East into a power vacuum, and markets absolutely hate power vacuums. Iran is not sitting still. Iranian forces are retaliating. They have struck U.S. allies in the region. They launched drones and missiles at Israel. Iranian submarines, Ghadir-class midget submarines, reportedly fired torpedoes at U.S. Navy vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. And Iran has done something that every oil analyst on Earth has been terrified of for decades. Iran has declared the Strait of Hormuz officially closed. That sentence right there. That is why your gas is going to cost more. That is why your 401k took a hit this week. That is why the IMF held an emergency press conference. And that is why the question on every economist's lips right now is a recession coming? Before we talk money and markets, you need to understand the Strait of Hormuz, because if you don't get this, nothing else in this video makes sense. The Strait of Hormuz is a narrow waterway, barely 21 miles wide at its narrowest point, sitting at the mouth of the Persian Gulf, right off Iran's southern coast. Every single day, 20 million barrels of oil flow through that strait. That's 1/5 of all the oil the entire world uses every single day. The U.S. Energy Information Administration calls it, and I'm quoting directly here, the world's most important oil choke point. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Iraq, the UAE, Qatar, all of their oil and liquid natural gas. It goes through the Strait of Hormuz to reach the rest of the world. There is no easy alternative route. Iran controls the northern side of that strait, and this week they have used that control as a weapon. By February 28th, oil majors, trading houses, and tanker owners had already begun suspending crude oil and LNG shipments through the strait. Reuters confirmed this. Shipping giants completely halted operations. By March 1st, Jorge Leon, Rystad Energy's head of geopolitical analysis, wrote in a note, "There is an effective halt of traffic through the vital shipping lane." And insurance? The insurance market has essentially withdrawn coverage for vessels attempting to pass through. When insurance companies won't insure your ship doesn't move. This is what analysts are calling a de facto closure, even before Iranian forces fired on any vessel. Now here's the critical question. Can the world replace what Iran is blocking? The short answer is not easily, not quickly, and definitely not cheaply. Now let's talk cold, hard numbers, because this is where it hits you personally. When markets opened on Sunday, March 1st, the first trading day after the strikes, Brent crude, the international oil benchmark, spiked as much as 13%, briefly crossing $82 a barrel. It settled around 77-78 by Monday afternoon. U.S. crude jumped 7.5% on Monday alone. On Tuesday, U.S. oil prices rose another 5%, hitting $75.20 a barrel. That's 2 consecutive days of major oil price increases. In the global stock market, $3.2 trillion in market value was wiped out in 48 hours. Let that sink in. $3.2 trillion gone. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged 1,200 points when markets opened. S&P 500 futures fell more than 1% at market open on March 2nd. Airlines tanked, cruise lines tanked. By Tuesday, the S&P 500 had recovered some losses, but still closed down about 0.9%, and Asian markets continued plunging the next day. But, and I want to be very transparent with you here, markets are actually betting that this disruption is brief. If traders and investors believed the Strait of Hormuz would stay closed for months, oil wouldn't be at $75–82 a barrel right now. It would be at $120. It might be at $130. Goldman Sachs previously estimated that oil could blast past $100 a barrel with any extended disruption to the strait. Bloomberg analysts have put a worst-case ceiling at $108 a barrel. And industry experts say if Saudi Arabia's oil production facilities get knocked offline, like its massive Abqaiq plant was briefly in 2019, we could be looking at prices that shatter all modern records. OPEC Plus tried to help. On March 1st, OPEC Plus agreed to increase oil production by 206,000 barrels per day, starting in April. That's a small gesture in an ocean of uncertainty. Analysts immediately said it likely won't be enough to offset a major Strait of Hormuz disruption. So where does oil need to go before it becomes a real crisis for everyday Americans? Let me break it down right now. Here's the formula that every oil economist uses, and you need to memorize this. For every $10 increase in the price of a barrel of oil, gas prices rise roughly 25 cents per gallon. That is not speculation. That is a well-established historical relationship. Before the strikes, gas prices across America averaged about $3 a gallon, the lowest levels since 2021. The Trump administration had been celebrating that number. It was a political win. Then, the war happened. By Tuesday, March 3rd, gas prices had already jumped 11 cents to a national average of $3.11 a gallon, according to AAA. Tom Closa, a veteran oil analyst and advisor to Gulf Oil, put it bluntly, wholesale prices for gasoline futures could rise 25 cents immediately because of the war with Iran, and that could translate to an increase of 5 to 10 cents per day for a while. He added, prior to Friday night, I would have said that we would stop at $3.25 per gallon. Now it's kind of open-ended. Open-ended. That's a scary phrase when we're talking about gas prices. Here's the math on worst-case scenarios. If oil reaches $85 a barrel, we're looking at gas around $3.25 to $3.50. If oil hits $100, gas climbs toward $3.75 to $4 nationally. And if oil spikes to $180 or to $120, we're back to 2022 levels, $4.50 SAO to $5 a gallon, or higher in some states. For the average American who drives 15,000 miles a year in a car getting 28 miles per gallon, going from $3 to $4.50 a gallon, costs you an extra $800 per year out of your pocket. That's not nothing. That's a car payment. That's a month of groceries. But here is what people don't fully appreciate. The pain doesn't stop at the gas pump. Oil is not just what makes your car go. Oil is everywhere in modern American life. And when oil gets expensive, everything gets more expensive, often in ways you don't immediately connect. First, groceries. When shipping and transportation costs go up because diesel is more expensive, grocery stores pay more to restock their shelves. Those costs get passed to you. Economists estimate a sustained high oil environment could add several percentage points to grocery price inflation. We're already dealing with food prices that are 5.7% higher than they were just a year ago, according to Newsweek. This war threatens to push that even higher. Second, airfare. Airlines are one of the most oil-sensitive industries in the economy. Jet fuel is their #1 operating cost. When oil prices rise 7 to 10%, airfares often follow within weeks. If you have a summer vacation planned, you might want to book those tickets now. Third, plastics, chemicals, and manufactured goods. Oil is a raw material for plastics and thousands of industrial chemicals. Higher oil prices eventually filter into the cost of packaging, clothing, electronics accessories, construction materials, you name it. Fourth, natural gas and your electricity bill. This one is getting less attention, but it's important. A liquid natural gas plant in Qatar was shut down during the conflict, and natural gas prices have surged sharply. In fact, natural gas had already risen 10% over the past year, partly because AI data centers are consuming enormous amounts of electricity. This war piled on top of that. Higher natural gas prices mean higher electricity bills every month. Fifth, fertilizers. Natural gas is a key ingredient in fertilizer production. Higher natural gas prices mean higher fertilizer costs. Higher fertilizer costs mean higher food prices, but with a delay of several months as the impact works through the agricultural supply chain. When you add all of this up, you're looking at the potential for what economists call a stagflation scenario. high inflation, and slow economic growth at the same time. That is the most painful economic environment you can live in. Prices go up, but jobs and wages don't keep pace. And right now, that is exactly what the IMF, the World Bank, and leading American economists are warning about. Here's where this story goes from "that's bad" to "that could genuinely hurt millions of American families for years to come." The Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States. For the past 2 years, Americans have been waiting, desperately waiting, for the Fed to cut interest rates. Lower interest rates mean lower mortgage rates, lower car loan rates, lower credit card rates. Relief. In 2025, the Fed cut rates 3 times. It was progress. Then in January 2026, they paused because inflation was still stuck at 3%, above their 2% target, even before this war started. Markets had been pricing in 2 rate cuts in 2026. Trump had been publicly demanding even more cuts. There was cautious optimism, and then the strikes happened. On Tuesday, Neel Kashkari, the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis and a voting member of the Fed's rate-setting committee, said at a Bloomberg investment conference in New York City, "Before the Iran war, I had supported at least 1 interest rate cut this year as inflation slowly cooled. But now I just need to see. We need to get a lot more data in." Morningstar put it even more dramatically. Any chance of a Fed interest rate cut in 2026 is evaporating before our very eyes with the Iran war set to stoke oil prices. Reuters reported that rate cut doubts are rising sharply as the Middle East conflict drives up energy prices. The Fed is expected to hold rates steady at its March meeting, which means if you are waiting to refinance your home, or buy a car, or carry a credit card balance, you are going to be waiting longer. For the nearly 5 million Americans whose adjustable rate mortgages are up for renewal in 2026, this is not an abstract concern. This is real money, every month. All right, so what actually happens next? This is the key question, and I'm going to lay out the 3 scenarios that economists and analysts are currently working with, based on analysis from ICIS, JP Morgan Private Bank, and multiple other financial institutions. Best case: contained shock, no recession. Timeline: war ends or significantly de-escalates within 2 to 4 weeks. In this scenario, the Strait of Hormuz reopens relatively quickly. Iranian retaliation is limited. Oil prices spike briefly but then fall back below $80 a barrel within a month. Gas prices tick up 20-30 cents, then gradually fall back. Inflation gets a small temporary bump, maybe 0.3 to 0.5 percentage points, but nothing that derails the economy. The Fed stays on pause, but eventually gets back to cutting rates later in 2026. This is what the market is currently pricing in. The reason oil isn't at $120 right now is because traders believe this is the most likely scenario. President Trump echoed this view on Tuesday, telling reporters in the Oval Office, "We have a little high oil prices for a little while, but as soon as this ends, those prices are going to drop, I believe, lower than even before." Medium case: persistent stagflation. Timeline: war drags on for 2 to 4 months. Strait of Hormuz remains disrupted. Oil hits $90–100 a barrel. Gas climbs toward $3.75–4.25 nationally. Inflation surges past 3.5% to 4%, the highest since early 2024. The Fed cannot cut rates at all in 2026. Business confidence takes a hit. Companies freeze hiring, reduce investment. Consumer spending weakens sharply because people are spending more on gas and groceries. Job growth slows to near zero. The economy doesn't technically go into recession, but it feels like one. Most Americans' financial situation gets noticeably worse. Kathy Bostjancic, chief economist at Nationwide Financial, described this risk perfectly. When there is an injection of new uncertainty into the business environment, that's a hit to confidence. The result could be similar to the impact of Trump's tariffs, which did not raise prices as much as feared, but did weigh on job gains. Hiring in 2025 was the weakest, outside of a recession, since 2002. Worst case: global recession. Timeline: prolonged war. Strait of Hormuz stays closed for months. Saudi oil infrastructure hit. This is the nightmare scenario. Oil hits $108 to $120 plus a barrel or higher. Gas in America goes to $4.50 to $5.50 a gallon. Inflation spikes past 5%. The Federal Reserve is forced to raise interest rates, not cut them, to fight inflation. That crushes the housing market, crashes consumer borrowing, and triggers mass layoffs. Bloomberg's worst-case analysis has put U.S. unemployment potentially climbing toward 11%, a level not seen since the depths of the 2009 financial crisis. Global GDP growth collapses. European economies, which are even more dependent on natural gas imports, are hit even harder. The IMF formally weighed in on March 3rd. We have observed disruptions to trade and economic activity, surges in energy prices, and volatility in financial markets. IMF official Daniel Katz flagged that prolonged conflict and energy disruptions could weigh on global growth and inflation, though it is too early to assess the full impact. The New York Times called it bluntly, "The global economy is facing the prospect of another profound shock." Let's bring this home, because all of these numbers, the barrels, the basis points, the trillion-dollar market losses, they translate into real life for real people. If you are a truck driver or delivery worker, your fuel costs are going up, and your employer may or may not absorb that cost. Your take-home pay is at risk. If you are a small business owner, higher energy costs, higher shipping costs, and a possible slowdown in consumer spending are hitting you from 3 directions at once. If you are a home buyer or homeowner, mortgage rate relief has just been pushed further into the future. For every 1% increase in mortgage rates, a $350,000 home costs you roughly $200 more per month. If you have a 401k or retirement account, you already felt the hit this week. The S&P 500 and Dow dropped sharply in the first days of this war. If this escalates, those losses could deepen. And here's the political dimension. Americans are already deeply unhappy with the economy. Polls show a gloomy public outlook, largely because of the price spikes of the last 5 years. Even before this war, inflation was stuck above the Fed's target. Gas prices had just been falling, a rare bright spot. Alex Jacques, an economic advisor to the Biden White House and now at Groundwork Collaborative, put it plainly. People generally don't think that President Trump is focused on the things they want him to focus on. And what they want him focused on is the price of groceries. The war in Iran has made every single one of these concerns significantly worse. So what do you do with all of this? Here are 5 practical things you can do right now to protect yourself, regardless of which scenario plays out. Fill up your gas tank tonight. Seriously. Gas prices have already risen 11 cents this week, and analysts say more increases are coming daily. A full tank today saves you money tomorrow. Review your energy bills and lock in rates if possible. If your utility or energy provider offers a fixed rate plan, now is the time to explore it. Natural gas prices are already surging. Check your 401k and investment allocation. If you're close to retirement, talk to a financial advisor about your exposure to oil-sensitive sectors and whether your risk tolerance matches your current portfolio. This is not investment advice. It's a reminder to have that conversation. Stock up strategically on non-perishable goods. Shipping and food prices are expected to rise. A modest strategic purchase of staples at today's prices makes financial sense. Stay informed, but ignore the panic. The market is currently betting on the best-case scenario. If you see oil prices still rising next week or the Strait of Hormuz remains closed for another 2 to 3 weeks, that's when the economic impact becomes more serious and sustained. Watch the oil price. Watch the Strait of Hormuz. Those are your 2 key indicators. Here is the bottom line. As of March 4, 2026, the US and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury against Iran 6 days ago. Iran has declared the Strait of Hormuz closed, threatening 20% of the world's daily oil supply. Oil prices are up 17% and 13% since the strikes began, with gas prices already rising 11 cents in days. $3.2 trillion in global market value has been wiped out. The Federal Reserve's interest rate cut plans are in serious jeopardy. The IMF, Bloomberg, Reuters, and the New York Times are all warning of a potential global economic shock. The question, is a recession coming, depends almost entirely on how long this war lasts and whether the Strait of Hormuz stays closed. If this ends in weeks, the economic damage will be real but recoverable. If it drags into months, the economic pain for everyday Americans will be severe and lasting. This is not fear-mongering. This is the reality of how connected your daily life is to a narrow stretch of water 7,500 miles from your front door. If you found this video valuable, hit subscribe. Share this with someone who needs to understand what is happening to the economy right now. I'll be covering every major update on this story as it develops, because right now, the most important thing you can do is stay informed. I'll see you in the next one. This video is for informational and educational purposes only. All facts, statistics, and quotes presented are sourced from credible public news organizations, including the Associated Press, CNN, Reuters, the New York Times, Bloomberg, CNBC, The Guardian, IMF official statements, and other verified outlets as of March 4, 2026. Economic conditions, oil prices, and geopolitical situations change rapidly. Information may be outdated by the time you view this. Nothing in this video constitutes financial, investment, legal, or professional advice of any kind. The creator makes no guarantee of accuracy and is not responsible for any financial decisions made based on this content. Always consult a licensed financial advisor before making investment or financial decisions. All opinions expressed are the host's personal views based on publicly available information.